Hello, good morning. Welcome to the third episode of the show Exploring Automation. Is that the right name?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So I'm Lavanya Mohan and with me is Ajay Balamurikdas.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Today I thought we'll do something a little different. So we've been talking about moving tests to the lower levels and talking about hows and whys. What we thought today is maybe we could take an example and see this for ourselves. All right. So let's get started. I'll share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes.
Okay. Let's take an example of a very simple application. Let's think about maybe an app which helps us search for some books and give us search results. Okay, so let's think about this book related app. For example, this is the search results page after we search for a book, and it basically lists things like the title of the book, the author, and the image. And if we select any one of these search results, then we are taken to another page called the book details page, which probably has some additional information about the book. So maybe the publishing, the year in which it was published, the number of pages, and so on. Okay, so pretty simple application. But for now, let's just focus on maybe the search results. Okay.
Okay.
So what we can start with, I'll just mention a couple of constraints, and then we can maybe think about what scenarios we would want to test. Doesn't matter automation or not. Let's start with just coming up with a couple of scenarios for this search results page. Okay. Some constraints I'm going to just note down here is we show only 10 results, a max of 10 results. Okay. And let's say in case there are more than 10 candidates based on our search string. So let's say I search for Harry Potter and there are actually more than 10 candidates possible. Then we show the latest published, the books published most recently. So based on published date. Alright. And yeah, for now there is just imagine that there is no pagination, nothing. So we just show 10 and then basically we can't see any further results anymore. Let's just think of this constraint and maybe come up with a couple of scenarios for this search results page. Okay, so maybe I can start and then Ajay pitch in. So I'll start with the easy one. We saw this page right now here, right? So I'll just say, oh, it should display title, it should display author, it should display the image. That's my first case. What else? I'll say if there are 20 candidates, it should still show 10. What else? Ajay, you have some inputs?
The same search uh, entry should display the same results every time.
Okay.
Consistency in results.
Okay. Maybe I'll add a couple of more for the number of books itself. So maybe I say something like, oh, if there are exactly 10 books, then it should show all 10. If there are zero, then maybe I expect an error message, some message.
And
What?
sorry, what is the step? How did we get here? Is this the first screen, or is there a screen before where?
Good question. So let's look at that screen. So there is just a search button and a text box, and if we type something here and click on search, then we come to the screen.
So is there a loading in between, or but is it out of scope for this?
We can just write it down for now, and then we'll discuss it in a little more detail. So you're saying something around performance? Is that what you're saying?
On both the screens, from coming to the search results and while loading the search results as well.
I'll just say performance of the pages for now. Maybe I'll say, you know what? So we're showing an image here, but all text should probably be present. Right? All text is probably, well, if the image doesn't load, then we should be able to at least see what that image was supposed to be. Or it also helps in accessibility related testing, accessibility cases, right? So maybe I would say all text should be present.
Okay. Supported in landscape mode?
Landscape or portrait, okay. All right. Maybe let's start with this and let's think about where would we try to automate. And before we go to that, let's just think about how this entire thing is structured itself. Is that okay? We'll start with these scenarios for. So let's say now this one, right? This book application. What is actually happening? How are the things modeled? We probably have a UI, which would be our client side code. This UI probably makes an API call. Let's say that the API is search with some parameters or body. So this would become our server side. And this search probably internally talks to some database, right? Which would have these book information. Now let's say that this how the database is populated is probably some other system which helps us do that. But assume that some data is already present, and we can this would be our like a typical workflow that when we search for something on the UI, it makes an API call to the server, and the server checks some searches for something in the database, returns that, and then it returns to the as an API response to the UI, and then the UI just displays it.
Okay, so no local cache concepts. I mean, sometimes you search locally, and then if it is not there, if it's a new search, you make a call to the server. That question can also be there.
Yes, so that's a good point. Cache related. Yeah, but for now, let's just assume that there is no cache. It always hits. It's a very simple application, and we just expect to use it amongst our friends. We don't expect a lot of hits. So for now, let's say it's just okay. Yeah. Now maybe let's talk in particular about this max 10 results. Right. Basically, we need somewhere in these three places maybe to say that even if there are more than 10 results, just give me 10. Right? So, what are the possible options? Where can this filtering logic be? One option maybe is, you were thinking, so you want to say?
Well, I mean, the initial thought was, all the three places.
Exactly. Yes, I was going to say that. So nice. So all three places, right? So one could be like in DB. Basically, when we search for a query, we could just say limit 10, right? Something like that. So our query itself could be like that, so that the DB itself returns just those top 10 values based on search results and order. We would probably do order by this date, something like that, and then just return. So that's one option. The second option is to have it here in the server side. Okay. So what does that mean? We fetch all from DB for that particular search term, and then we apply filtering logic. And the third one could be here on the client side. So basically, the API just returns everything, and then the client side does the filtering. Now, most people don't do this because it is unnecessary data consumption and it's probably slow. So mostly it would happen in one of these places. I think most cases people prefer to have it as a DB query because database is optimized for these kind of things. But for this example, let's just assume that it is happening here at the server side. Okay, so this is the place where the filtering logic is happening, and all other business logic, if there is anything, will also be present here. Okay, so this is what we have till now. Now, let's maybe look at this server side in a little more detail, just to understand what's exactly happening. How is it actually doing a filter? All right. So I'll just type it below here. Yeah. So when we call a search endpoint, that is when we are actually making an API call, let's say internally it calls some method called getBooks or filterBooks. Okay? Let me just say getBooks for now, based on that search string. And this getBooks will internally make a call to get the data from DB. So let's say this is another method in another class. We usually, let's call it a repository class. And for convenience right now, I'll just say get book from DB, just to understand the differences. Okay. So this get book from DB is actually doing connection with the DB. As in it, so your application would already have established connection, but this is actually talking to the DB. Let me write it like that. And it returns the results from the DB to this particular method getBooks. This getBook is actually doing the filtering logic.
Right.
It says, oh, I have got 20 books. Let me now filter it based on the, let's just take the 10 books based on top published date, and then return it to this, the actual caller. So finally here, when we actually hit this API, we would probably, let's say, get a JSON response, which is an array of books. All right, multiple details. So every book will have title, every book will have author, published date, maybe the image URL, and so on. Okay, so this is how our actual flow on the server side works. Now let's look at this particular method, which is actually doing the filtering. Okay, what does this getBooks method do? Well, it takes a book name and internally it calls this. It gets the results and then it applies some filtering on the results and then returns it. Right? So what can we do if we were to test this getBooks method alone? If we were to do that, then maybe we can mock the response from the internal call. Right? Internally, it calls getBook from DB method. Let's just mock the response of this. And then we can check if the filtering logic worked correctly. So what can we do here? Let's say first, for the first test, I mock it as it returns 20 results. Right? And then my assertion will be, hey, are the top 10 only shown? And for top 10, we can just say, like, we can also check, is it the correct top 10, right? It's not just size, but also, yeah, title 1 is shown, title C is shown, B is not shown, and so on, based on the date. So we can do all that here. Right? The next thing we can also do is, hey, if it returns 0 results, does it still return 0? Right? If this like the values from DB actually does not return anything because there are no books with that name, then does it actually cause some error? Is there a null pointer exception or something that comes up, or is it actually returning? Is this particular method saying, oh, there are no books, I'm just going to return something empty back? That can be checked. Right?
Yeah.
So we could check even like a happy path case where it's exactly 10, where it's just 5, so on. We could do all those things here in this method. Now, what is the advantage of doing it in this method?
Is it both the time as well as the
time is a very important reason. Since it's not making an actual call to the database, this will definitely be faster since it's not actually reading from the database. So time is a very big factor. We get a lot of flexibility also. Right? We could mock the response exactly how we want and test all those different scenarios. So flexibility is one thing. The other thing is, let's say that a test fails. Let's say that this 20 results test failed and we got, instead of 10, we are now showing just 5. It's very easy to know what is the, which area the failure is actually in. We know that the failure has to be in this particular method.
Right, so the touch points have reduced, so we can easily pinpoint where and what.
Yeah. Yeah, so pinpointing in case of failures is very easy. These are one of few of the many advantages to just have these kind of checks at this particular level. So now this, whatever we just discussed, that we will call this particular method, we will mock the response from the internal method, the method that it calls internally, and do assertion. This is what unit testing is. We are just looking at a small unit, in this case, just one method, and checking if the logic that is expected to happen in this method is working correctly or not. So that's all. This is unit testing. All right?
Right.
Okay, so now let's go ahead to this method now, maybe. Get book from database. What does this method do? Well, it's actually talking to the database, and based on whatever we have mentioned as the query, it returns the results back.
So just remind me, we fetch all the books here because the filtering is on get books, right?
Okay. Correct. So we are basically just fetching all the books based on that query. So some search tree that we pass. Yeah. So what can we test here? If we want to see that this is actually fetching all the books for that particular search string, what can we maybe test here?
The max.
Okay.
The max results list. I mean the max number of books.
Okay. Right. So what that would mean is, let's say, since this is talking to the DB, maybe we first seed some data in the DB. Right? We put some data first. It has to be, of course, based on what we want to test. So let's say that we want to say when I search for Harry Potter, only Harry Potter is returned, Lord of the Rings is not returned. So in that case, I would probably in the seed data put both Harry Potter as the book and also Lord of the Rings, and then search. Right? As you said, maximum. So I could put 20 books and see that all 20 are returned.
Right.
Correct? So that's what we would do here. We would seed data, and we would call this method. First, we would seed the data. Then we would, in the test, we would call this method, and then we would assert that it is actually returning all the books or not. Whatever we just discussed. Now, this method, since it uses RealDB, for running this test, we will have to start the DB. Right? Only then we can actually see the data. So what is this? This is like, so our server app, and is a method in the server app is talking to database. So this becomes like an integration test, right? Because it is actually using a real database. Let's say that this method was internally calling another service, and we were using that other real service. That would also be an integration test. Okay. So the advantage of this integration here in this case is we are actually able to check whether our connection with the DB is fine, and whether it actually gives the expected results. So whether our queries are correct as well. Right? So those things which we couldn't cover in this particular test, for example, we can cover here.
Right.
Right? Now, usually when people think about integration tests, what do they think about? Like entire flow, right? Like maybe hitting the search API that would internally, do everything, all these other methods, then actually get data from database.
They start thinking on start to end, like.
Correct, start to end. So that is also integration test. But this also, since they are two different checkpoints in some sense, so this is also called integration test. And I think Martin Fowler's blog, one of them, it classifies this as narrow integration test. So since it's not covering the entire scope, but just from the server to the actual DB, just a little bit smaller scope. So it's so they call it narrow integration test. Okay. So before we move ahead, let's just talk about what are the different things that we've already covered. Maybe from this list itself. So we covered, in some sense, that hey, filtering logic works, right? So maybe these two things, or maybe not the error part, but we can see that 0 is returned. We can see exact 10 is returned, or even in this case, when it is greater than 10 candidates, we still return just 10. This much is covered, and yeah, the actual integration part with the database is also in some sense covered till now.
Right.
Okay. Now let's talk about this part. So, okay, we know that database is making a proper connection and giving results. If this particular method gives X results, this getBooks server side method will filter it and return the correct 10 results. But is it returning correctly? Like we said, we expect JSON. So is it actually returning a proper JSON back? That we have not tested yet here, correct? So for that we would probably have a test from this case. So we would actually maybe hit the search endpoint. Before we do that, maybe we will see data. If we want to talk, like if we actually want to have this end-to-end sort of wider integration test, then we would call the search endpoint. We would let it call these internal methods. We'll let it get the actual books, then return and do filtering, and then return the response back. Right? And then we would finally check, is the JSON that is returned, is that correct? So what do we check in the JSON? Maybe we'll see, it's a JSON array is what we're saying, right? So are there 10 items in that array? Are title, author name, etc. display are present in the JSON array? Right? So also we could also check, is title a string? Instead of, it's not a number. We could check, is the published date, is that a, let's say it's a long, right? Maybe epoch time. So is it a long? So we can check the data types as well. And we can of course check the values as well, because we know what we are seeding inside anyway.
So both the data for all the keys and then the data types. Right?
Yeah, so we could check data and data types. It depends on what we would want to do. This is possible, right? But let's say that we know that the data is going to be fine because we have already maybe checked it somewhere here. Let's say we did that. So then here maybe we can just say, let me just check the counts and let me check the data types. The data types check is probably just schema validation. Right? We can say, are the required fields actually coming? So let's say title is always required. Is it actually showing up? Is there never a case where title is missing? Things like that, right? So we could do all those kind of checks here.
Right.
And if we now think about it, since we have covered like hitting the API, then also individually covered this particular method of filtering, and individually covered this method of fetching data from database, we can almost say that this server-side code is working well together. Right? After this third integration test that we wrote, where we actually hit the API itself, we can say, these three things are working fine together because we are getting the expected results back. Right? So in that sense, now we have from like JSON, again, we have seen, we have not seen display part, we have not come to the UI, but we are seeing, whether the expected title, author things are displayed, whether it shows exactly 10. We could hit it multiple times to see if the results are consistent, and so on. Alright. So in some sense, now we have an understanding that hey, the server-side code is tested on its own. It's fine. Yeah. But what are the things that we have not checked yet? We have not checked is whether it is actually displayed. Yeah, server is returning, but UI side we don't know. We have not done any check on the UI part yet. Correct? So now let's move on and think about what check maybe we would want to do on the UI side.
Just to remind everyone, the checks that we have written, even at the server side, are, I would say, a sample set. It is not the complete set of cases that we could check for. Right? There are many more cases, right from every field, the min, max, the different types, the supported, not supported, all of those can be checked, and it would be much quicker if we focused automating only that compared to going from start to end, right? So someone should not think that you have missed that case. No, we have not missed. For this discussion purpose, we have restricted it.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes. All right. So now let's move on to the UI part. Till now, well, we checked just the API and we checked whether the API returns are the values that we expect. But we have not seen whether the whatever API returns is actually displayed correctly on the UI. That's an important check as well. So let's now maybe think about this API, the UI part itself. Right? What exactly does the UI do? Let's just think of the search results page maybe. That search result page internally calls this search API method. It gets a JSON response back, and then based on the JSON response, it does the rendering. Right. What we can also do now is we can say, hey, you know what? Let's mock this JSON response. Instead of actually hitting the real server, let me mock the JSON response, and we will check if the things are displayed as expected. So in that test, let me just write UI. Let's say again mocking API response. So what are the things we could do here? Maybe we could say 0 results. That could be one check. So in that case, we can check whether on the UI it says, sorry, we couldn't find a hook for it. Let's say it is exactly 10 results, or maybe, yeah, it can't be more than 10, right? It will have to be 10 because the filtering logic has already happened on the server side. So it will be either 10 or lesser, it cannot be more. So we don't need to check for 20 because that doesn't, there is probably no logic on the client side anyway to not display more than 10. Right? It probably just displays everything that is returned by the server. So in this case, 10, we will check if all 10 are displayed. We could also, in this case, mock some server error response. So maybe a 5xx error. Okay? Normally, if we were hitting the real server, seeing how a 5xx error works would behave is very difficult, right? You actually have to take the server down, which is not easy to do. So if we are mocking it, we can do that, and then maybe we check for another error message which says try again later. In case it is like that. What else can we check? Oh, we can check whether the titles are actually displayed in those correct tags. So let's say H3 maybe has the titles, and H4 or whatever, some div tag has these author names. We can also check, hey, if the author name is missing in the response. Let's say author name is not mandatory. Title is, we are saying, is mandatory, but let's say author name is not mandatory. So in that case, what should happen? Maybe the UI side has some logic which shows unknown. So we can also, in our mock data, have something like this, that there is no author name. So it shows.
Okay. So here again we are like the data. Is it present? Not present, because now I can think of image, alt text, unknown spelling. Yeah. Image, alt text.
Yes.
So
correct.
No image. No alt text present and alt text present. So it's again coming back to the same theme of is the data there or not there?
Right. So if the data is there, does it display correctly? If the data is not there, does it do something else? Whatever is expected, it could be anything based on our system. So all these data type kind of checks can be done here. So what we just did here is basically we took this, let's say, search results component on the UI side. We mocked the data that the search result component actually uses, and we tested that component independently, right? So actually, if you think about it, this is also a form of unit test, right? But it's unit test for the UI components. And a lot of libraries actually support this, so it's heavily recommended that we do this, right? Because things like 5xx error, otherwise it's just difficult to do. Again, since it is mock data, since real API calls are not happening, it's fast. And it gives us flexibility. We can do multiple different things that we want to test. And again, same thing, in case any test fails, we will know exactly where to look for, which method to look for almost, right? So it can help us pinpoint that very well. Okay, so whatever we spoke about till now, let's say this, the search book, the individual filtering logic, the DB related integration, the entire API integration, and this unit test of UI components. A lot of times, maybe developers write it. Maybe testers are not involved. It's possible. In some cases, testers may be involved as well. But I think as testers, what is important probably is to try and understand these models, right? Like understand how the system actually is working end to end. And then we can ask questions that, hey, is this part already covered? And maybe some developer will say, yeah, we have covered this in the filtering logic related test. So you don't need to worry about that in something else, right? So conversations can happen when we try to understand how our system actually works internally. We don't need to know the exact method name. I mean, for our convenience right now, we wrote these method names. We don't need to know it. But we can say, hey, is this particular filtering logic checked? Is the integration with the database checked? Right? It could be those kind of generic statements. We don't need to know the. I mean, if you're looking at code, fine, that's great. If you're not looking, also, it's all right. We can still have those conversations. Okay. Now, before we move ahead, let's again look back at this and see what are the things that have already been. Okay. So we also tested now after we added component UI related tests. We also tested whether it's actually getting displayed. And this one again, filtering logic was already tested. These things. We also checked error in after we added component UI. We also checked whether it actually shows that error message. So this part also done. Yeah, again all text. This was also, let's say, done. Consistency in results. If we hit the same UI multiple times, it's also done.
Accessibility double S.
Sorry.
9th line double S spelling.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Consistency.
Okay, so
consistency was tested. Next we went to performance.
Yeah, so performance we haven't covered yet. Maybe.
Would this be a test like keep checking the number of entries? I mean, keep varying the number of entries and see the response time. At least at one layer, you check that how quickly are the results fetched.
So that's doable, yes. But I think, say, performance, a lot of other factors come in, right? Like maybe talking about how many concurrent users are present for our system, or what is the load and all that. So those aspects, I guess, we've not really covered yet.
So
that might be
client
like
side versus server side.
Sorry?
Client side versus server side.
Oh, right. So those aspects, I think it could still be covered separately. Caching, we said for now it's not there. But next anyway, we could look at, yeah. Right. So yeah, okay. So for now we have covered these parts. All right. So does it mean that we don't need to test this at all again? Like, do we need any more tests, or does it mean we're already good? What do you think about it?
Based on the results, we can check the results and do the tests that are not tested. If we think there is something else which is not covered, or I would say we can do at least one or two tests, right? And not like totally rely on this unless you can consistently see the results, the execution results. Right? Like, okay, or you yourself can run and say, okay, what happened to all of these checks?
Right.
And yes, no.
Right. So that's a great point. And since you mentioned we can run a few, I will talk about what we didn't cover yet. So we checked, let's say, the server side part, integration, we checked that. What we checked on the client side till now is by mocking data. But we have not yet checked integration of client with the server. And here, when we did all these checks, we were actually just mocking the API response. So that is one more piece which we have not covered yet. Yeah, the client side system seems to work independently, if assuming this is the kind of data response it will get back. The server system is working decently, assuming these are this is the data already present in DB. It seems to work fine. Is it working well together?
We can check.
Yeah, so we can check. And that's something what a lot of people call end-to-end testing. So end-to-end functional UI, I think a lot of people have different names for this. Let's for now just stop, say that it is end-to-end. So what do we do in end-to-end? Well, maybe we have already seeded data or something like that in the DB. Let's say it's pre-seeded in some environment. All your servers are started and deployed somewhere.
Hmm.
And you will actually hit a real URL. So we hit a URL and the URL on the UI. So let's say it is some xyz.com/something, right? So we actually hit that URL. Then we actually would search for some string and hit enter in the search box. And then we would verify the results that are displayed.
Right.
And when we do this, we're almost thinking about it in terms of a user. Right? We don't really care what API responses were there. We don't think about how it was fetched. We just check from the UI perspective. Right? Of course, for seeding data and all of that, you would probably use some other APIs. But
so that's outside of this test. That is, or maybe it's not outside of test. It is a part of a test in terms of getting the configuration up. Right.
Right. So something like a precondition to starting the test itself. Yeah. So now this one with this test, we're checking this entire, like all these different components are working okay together.
Yeah.
Right. And what do we verify in this? Well, we could verify the exact titles as well if we know for sure that this is exactly what is going to be returned. Or we could just say maybe is it present? Just do those kind of checks. Again, it would depend on our systems. So in some cases we would want to do the exact assertions. In some cases we might be just okay to see if it's displayed or not. It would also depend.
Sorry, I'm thinking two different thoughts. One is get the results of all the unit tests, right? Saying okay, we had 2-3 methods. So okay, what are the results of first method, second method, third method? Keep them in parallel. I mean, keep them next to each other, and then do this test. Like okay, I've tested Harry Potter Volume 1, maybe I don't know the titles. Harry Potter, right? Volume 1, and then see what is the response in the next one, and then in the UI. That is one, and the other is without any knowledge of these unit tests, go ahead and test that right at that E2E and see if it works, right? So these two things. One is being aware of what's being tested and check that if it is cascaded to the or like brought to the E2E, and the other is I don't have any idea of the unit tests which have been done. Let me just test. Okay, as a user, this is what I want to do and test it and see what happens. Right? At least these two things I'm like very curious to do now.
Just one point about looking at like all these unit test related data, right? So in this case, for example, maybe we are seeding, but it's a local server in local DB instance. So we seed data, but then we probably delete the data also after test. So in case we want to see the exact same thing, then maybe we need to ensure that even in this E2A, we seed the similar kind of data. If we want to do a comparison.
Right, with all other parameters, factors being constant, right? So that kind of a test.
And since you mentioned it, without looking at unit tests at all, it's great. It's still fine. But one question that, like when we start thinking only in terms of, end-to-end test, what I would, let's say that we want to now in this case, let's say check for a case where all those different combinations, like 20 candidates or just 5 candidates or 0 candidates, we might be tempted to add all those tests here. Okay? We might be tempted to add all those different variations in this end-to-end test as well. But if we know that some of these things are already covered, we might not necessarily have to do it. Why? Because we know that it's going to catch in the earlier layers. That earlier test will fail if there is an issue.
Right.
So it won't even reach this point. So instead of let's say just take this count related scenario, right? So instead of these three, for example, we can now have just one which checks the entire integration is working fine. We don't need those three cases here. And let's say later, when we add this book details related page as well, like on clicking, it could actually very well be part of the same one scenario that we have tested as well. Like in this case itself, okay, verify some titles, then click on this title and verify that the same title opened.
Mm-hmm.
For book details test, again, like there could be multiple scenarios, a lot of which could be tested at the lower levels. And at the higher level, it's also possible that we don't even need to create a separate like scenario. We could just add to this one and it could still do the job.
Right.
So just mainly I wanted us to think about. So yes, we usually come up with cases and a lot of them, right? This is just a very small set of what is possible. And even here, we saw that quite a few of these things could be automated at the lower level. And what we ended up is maybe with one scenario at the end-to-end level to check the entire integration. Right? And the main reason I wanted to do this was to see that let's not think about, like a lot of times we have a lot of, let's say, test cases and we think about just converting all of them into automated tests driven through UI. A lot of times, well, if our developers are writing a lot of unit tests, it could be duplicates, it could be unnecessary. And when we just keep adding a lot of tests on this particular end-to-end level, there are a lot of other factors we need to take care of, right? Like data is present. Oh, is the network connection fine? If something goes wrong there, then all our tests also will fail. Is it an environment which is shared for somebody to do exploratory testing as well? What if they modify that data? There are a lot of factors. So it's best to, well, we can, of course, we start with scenarios, but it's best to see which ones can be covered at lower levels and have discussions. And that will help us to know what we need to actually do here.
So the question to ask when someone says automate maybe is, do you want it to be automated or do you want it to be automated via the UI?
Yes. Yes, very good point. Yes.
If you want it to be automated, I will show you how there are other ways to get this tested, get this checked, right? But what is the purpose of the end-to-end automation, right? Do you want to show it as a demo on your website that, I don't know, of your testing capability? Maybe not the right demo, I would say, right? Instead, this particular 45 minutes of our time, what we did, I'm like now visualizing, okay, anytime anyone says automate, like, okay, you want, the purpose of automation is to check here, right, across the different test ideas or the parameters or the values. They are done. They are done, but not necessarily at the UI layer what you assumed to get it done all the time, right? So fantastic.
Also, I hope that in whatever I spoke about, right, I probably didn't talk about tools at all. I didn't mention Selenium or Rest Assured or anything, right? Because concepts are more important. Tools we can decide based on our problems. We can decide together as a team based on maybe our skill sets or what we think would fit in that context that we are working. Right? So, and I'm just reiterating this right now because I feel discussions like what we just had right now to think about which test we really need at the end-to-end level, which tests can be done at lower levels, are probably a lot like will give us a lot more value than just discussing, oh, this tool is nice, let's try this or something like that, right? For the product. So let's I mean, and once we start like decide when once we decide on a tool and get to it, then again, that part is done. But this part will be almost every time, right? Every time we add a new feature, every time we add something, make some changes to the code, this kind of discussion probably will need to happen. So I would like to emphasize that this is like more important than just thinking about tools. We can definitely figure tools out easily, but this is something that I think a lot of us would, if we focus on it will help in the long run.
Right. And to do all of these, it is no longer dev versus testing team. It is more like, okay, dev and testing team versus the problem that we are trying to solve, rather than, okay, we have coded, go ahead and automate, you do at whatever layer you want to do and all that. Good.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. And I think in my experience also, right, like at the start, I didn't really know unit test. I didn't know how to look at it. What, but I used to ask questions and I used to talk to developers very often. It was pre-COVID time, so we were sitting together. Um, and I think the team that I worked with, like at least my first project, were very kind and they were very helpful. So they would themselves, like since I started asking those questions, they themselves would show me and say, hey, you know what, see, look at code. This is what we have done. This is how we have modeled. These are our classes. This is what we already have tests for. And they would also ask, do you think we should add anything else? And then I would look at it as, hey, what about this? Oh yeah, okay, let's add for that as well. And then suddenly maybe one of them failed, and then oh okay, let me fix it. Then we'll talk again later. That day. So uh, so the nice things about this was we, like maybe found certain issues even without I getting the build and actually testing it. Right? It was just discussions, and we found some issues, and then they would fix it. So I think a lot of time in that sense was saved. And eventually, since we did this often, I started trying to like understand more about how the code is modeled, how it's structured, and then trying to think about these aspects, like where it can be tested myself. But still, we would always have discussions. Like it's not necessary that I'm going to be right. Sometimes I would have not thought of some other aspects which they can point out. Uh, and it's I think a great learning opportunity, those kind of discussions. So that's how I started, and I think yeah, I hope more people will be able to do something like that I have a journey like that as well.
Right. And if you're worried about, oh, I have no knowledge of programming, it's high time to start learning about stuff. And you need not be a master or I mean, you need not be an expert there. What I'm trying to highlight is get to know the basics. Like, what is a method? What is a class? What are they doing? You need not even go ahead and write code if you're not comfortable. Sit with someone, who can write code, who has the patience and the can explain, saying, oh, what is done 2 3 times, and then you go practice, and then you are up to the speed in terms of, at least like Lavanya mentioned, asking questions, right? And now when you see the discussion that we had, right, it is broken down into parts, right? Here are the ideas to be tested. Okay, for that, one, understand the system. the the more you understand the system, then you will be able to contribute more, saying, oh, okay, wait, why are we doing it here, whereas this particular layer or the method is responsible for this particular test or the function, right? So that way, uh, don't be afraid. Max to max, you will know what to learn, and then once you learn the basics, go sit, talk. uh, there are many who are ready to help you understand if you're willing to put in the hard work. So talk to them, get started with them, and then slowly, by the kind of questions that you ask, they'll be impressed, and then they'll give you even more homework or knowledge that you can build on, right? And learning is any day, it is something that is built up. I mean, it is not like 0 to 1. It is, right. So yeah, if you don't know coding, uh, good that you know that you don't know. Now what do you do? Take the next steps. It could be the baby steps, but take the next steps. No, all of us.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
I think so. It's really not even necessary to know a lot of code in depth to have discussions like these, or just to understand, because a lot of these things are just logic, right? Like just saying that hey, whether the values from database are fetched correctly is already tested at a repository level, for example. And that's enough for us to know what are the things now that can actually be tested in that. We don't even need to really know exactly how that database connection is done, what kind of query we're writing. It's maybe not required. Uh, so so yeah, don't be afraid that we don't know to read code or write code.
Oh, yes, by that phrase, at least get to read code, at least get to learn to read code, and which is easy by saying, do you understand this? If not, what is the next lower level at which you can understand? What is it that you don't know which is not helping you understand that, right? So if
And I'm just thinking if reading our application code is becoming very difficult, then it probably also is a good feedback to the developers that they need to maybe do some refactoring. So also that's also one of the possibilities.
uh, get out of your desk and talk to people, right? And in this area, okay, at least ping people and talk, but talk, right? Uh, don't be with your system alone and I'm the tester, I'm the gatekeeper. No, please go and talk. Customer doesn't care who messed up or who built it. Customer cares, okay, whether that company gave me the product or not, right? So stop thinking I'm the tester, I'm the developer, and I'm not saying, you know, testing and development merge. I'm a strong believer saying, okay, you testers are needed, developers are needed, the different roles are needed is what I'm trying to emphasize. At the same time, uh, it's not or, it's like you do what you are specialized for, and also collaborate with them to understand, collaborate with everyone, not just developers, collaborate with everyone to understand what other test ideas can you think of, and if that test idea can be tested in an inexpensive way through unit tests, why not go for it, right? So maybe collaborate 73. Yeah, thank you.
Should I put another hyphen? Like,
Good one. Yeah, that's left for the audience to comment. uh, what do you think we did not talk about, or what do you think we talked about but we did not emphasize enough, right? So for that's for the audience. Yeah, fantastic. Anything else, Lavanya?
nothing else.
I'm just
So,
waiting for that app to be installed on my phone.
which app?
The book app.
Oh, okay.
That joke. Okay. Good. So with that, we end today's session, and so this was good. We had a live demo of our thought process, right? So, so see you all in the next session. And by the way, this is the third, so we have two other sessions which we have completed before. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.